So here's the big question. You're interested in value investing and valuing and evaluating businesses on a deep level, but you don't know how, even after researching for hours, probably dozens of hours, hundreds of hours on the internet, and because nobody else shows you how to do it. This podcast has all those answers and much more about value investing and finance. My name is Jason Rivera. Welcome to Value Investing in Your Car. Hey, Jason here. In this episode of Value Investing in Your Car, I'm going to tell you the preliminary results of my research project over the last 39 days. I've researched 3,943 stocks in 73 different countries. And I'm going to tell you the preliminary results of that data after I just finish it up over the weekend in today's episode. Before I tell you that, though, I need to let you know that you can get this podcast or this video as a podcast anywhere in the world for free on all major podcasting platforms: iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, SoundCloud, Anchor, and more. You can get your value investing education, knowledge anywhere in the world for free on the go. And this podcast was last year voted, or at the end of last year, voted a top 15 value investing podcasts in the world. Okay, so over the last 5 years, I haven't personally researched companies en masse for about 5 years now because valuations have been sky high. The only time I've really researched companies and read their financial statements and gone through my entire process was when I was when I was doing something for personal usage. I was just curious about something, or I was teaching students. Other than that, I've been working on my businesses and writing books and creating content like this for you guys over the last 5 years. But with the steep market crash in mid-March due to the coronavirus stuff, I started looking at companies en masse again. And today I'm going to tell you the preliminary results of that process. Over the coming days and weeks, I'm going to share with you more information. My team and I are working to put the data and make it more readable in a spreadsheet so I can tell you which companies look like they might have which countries look like they might have the best opportunities, which countries look like they might be the most overvalued, which kind of companies may be in trouble in terms of cash flow, stuff like that. So we're working to build the data out. But today I just want to share the preliminary results of that project, of my research project over the last 39 days with you. So I've got my printout here, and I'm going to read off some of these stats for you. So sorry, I'm not looking at you right now, but I want to make sure these stats were right. So 3,943 stocks in 73 countries worldwide. On every continent, I looked at stocks other than, of course, Antarctica. I don't know the data yet, but preliminarily, just based on my anecdotal stuff, Japan looks like it may be the cheapest, or at least the most countries on my watch list might be coming from Japan. But again, I'll let you know more about that in the coming few days. So these, in the links below, I will share, and again, I'm going to go over the data again, or give you some more data, but I will give you the list to every the country list of the countries I looked at, and the OTC market list that I looked at. Those will be linked below this video, so you will have access if you want to go through these manually like I did, to find potentially great stocks. It took me 39 days to do this because I do it manually. Literally, when I say manually, one by one, I put the ticker into Morningstar, do a visual look of my preliminary analysis checklist. If something passes that, then I move on to my full preliminary analysis checklist. And if something passes that, that's the stage I'm getting to next, which is reading financial reports en masse, doing things like owner's earning calculations, TEV calculations to see which companies are the most undervalued so I can go to the next stage, which is, again, reading financial reports and 10Ks, proxies, 10Qs, and their foreign equivalents en masse. Okay. Oh, and before I get to the actual data, when I say manually, again, I mean this, that I search them one by one by one by one manually. I don't use stock screeners. I use lists of companies. The reason I don't use stock screeners, I've talked about in a previous video. They leave out, I haven't found a stock screener that will fit my specific criteria. And I'm not a software engineer, so I don't know how to build it. So I literally have to look through these one by one by one because I don't know how to put the criteria I want into a stock screener. But this has many benefits. I learn more companies faster. I look through more companies faster. I find potential great investments faster. And I learn more about different industries. For example, most of the companies I've looked at were on OTC and or ADR markets. There's some weird companies on there. One company that is coming to mind right now is this isn't the weirdest one. I'll tell you about that another time as well. But there are several companies on the OTC, I think it was the OTC list, that they own single like hotels in specific areas of the United States, and they just operate that single hotel, and that's it. You can find super interesting companies on the OTC and ADR markets. Having said that, before you go to the links below with these lists, if you don't know what you're doing, stay away from the OTC list. 99% of companies on there are terrible. You will get blown up at some point if you don't know what you're doing. This is coming from a guy who loves looking at the OTC markets. 99% of them terrible. If you don't know what you're doing, stay away because you will get blown up at some point. Okay. So these companies I looked at, only one out of the 3,943 stocks I looked at, only 108 of them I did the full preliminary analysis on. So this means that 97.3% of them failed my visual preliminary analysis checklist. What does that mean? It means if I have all this Morningstar data up, I can tell within 20 seconds if it's a company I want to research further or not, if it fits my criteria. That means only 2.7% of all the companies I researched made it to my second level of analysis. This is how I'm able to research so many companies and research so many companies so fast, is because I do kind of a visual look, 20, 30 seconds. If something doesn't pass it, then I go on the next stock. If something does pass it, then I put it on a list, and then I do my full preliminary analysis research on it. So I spend a lot less time looking at terrible companies and a lot more time looking at potentially great companies. Out of these 108 companies, it looks like 8 to 15 of them will be investments I'll either buy now that I've already done enough research on because I've already begun looking at financial reports and 10Ks and 10Qs and proxies for certain companies, or that because based on my preliminary analysis checklist that they're so undervalued or so cheap or they have such great margins or some combination of these, then I may buy them at some point in the near-term future. The rest of the companies I may buy at some point if their valuations come down, if their debt levels come down, if their margins go up, some of those things. But as of right now, 8 to 15 of the companies of the original 3,943 companies look like they may be potential investments now. Okay, this means, so from the top stage, 2.7% of the companies made it, down to the middle stage, 108. That means 7.4% of the remaining companies of the 108 to 13.9% may become an investment at this point of the remaining companies. So this, and I'll illustrate this with the next point, illustrates that my preliminary analysis checklist does a very good job of finding potentially great investments for me, because out of the original companies, 8 to 15, 0.002% to 0.0038% of all the companies I researched may become potential investments. 0.002 to 0.0038 may become potential investments for me. While from the preliminary kind of visual look that I did to the second stage preliminary analysis checklist, 7.9% to 13.9%. So there's an exponential difference in the initial companies that I discard kind of right off the bat and the companies that I look at, and based on my preliminary analysis checklist that I may buy at some point. It's a magnitude of order different. So what does that mean kind of in a real world sense? Right now, based on today's or over the last 39 days, the valuations of companies over the last 39 days, that means that I will invest in one out of every 26,316 to one out of every 50,000 companies I research. There's an estimated somewhere between 30 and 50,000 companies worldwide. So the odds right now are not in my favor. So what does this mean? This means a couple things. This means that my preliminary analysis checklist is super strict, which I haven't researched stocks in 5 years because I knew they were massively overvalued based on my previous research. So that's number one. That's pretty obvious. What that also means is that because I'm so patient and my process is so strict, that I have a higher chance of earning higher returns over the long term. This has been shown in my investment returns over the last 8 years of 21.7% versus the market, which is about 9% up per year. Those numbers are per year. So, but there's also a third thing. This also means that the market is massively overvalued still. I should be finding more than 0.002 to 0.0038% of companies that fit my criteria that I may invest in at some point if companies were cheap. Everybody online, if you search pretty much anywhere, Fox Business, Fox News, CNBC, CNN, Market Watch, whatever, you'll see people that are saying the stocks are cheap now. They are not cheap. I talked about this in one of my Facebook Live videos I did. Stock, as of right, or this was a couple days ago, stocks are about 40% overvalued based on the Shiller PE or the CAPE ratio. And I'll link to that video again because I explained this in that video and I show the graphic and everything in that video. So I'll link to that. 30 to about 50% overvalued based on that ratio, based on the historical average. We're at higher valuation levels now today than at any point other than the Great Depression and the tech bubble in the early 2000s. Even after the 15 to 25% fall we're still dealing with since the February highs. Before the market crash in March, the stock market, based on this ratio, the CAPE ratio, was at its highest level. The only highest level, or the only other higher level other than we were at then in February, was the 2000s tech bubble. We were even at higher valuations than the Great Depression. So based on a kind of macro market level, stocks are overvalued. Based on a micro level on individual stocks, companies overvalued. I would bet, and again, I'm going to share this in the coming days based on my research so I can get you specific numbers. But I would guess, if I had to guess, that most companies worldwide are still overvalued by 30 to 50% to be what, or they would have to fall another 30 to 50% to be what I consider cheap. Stocks are not undervalued. They're just not right now. They may be good buys over the next 20, 30 years. Yes, that's probably likely. But are they undervalued? There's no chance they're undervalued, at least in large quantities. There are pockets of undervaluation, of course, as pretty much always. Like I said, I found 8 to 15 companies that either probably will or may become buys at some point. But in general, companies are not undervalued. So to share something else with you, because I thought those odds were insane, so I did some research about what, based on the current numbers of my research or my stock analysis, I have better odds of doing the following things than finding an investment right now. Being injured by a toilet, that's 1 in 10,000 odds. Odds of finding a pearl in an oyster, 1 in 12,000 odds. Odds of bowling a perfect game in bowling, 1 in 11,500 odds. Odds of winning an Oscar, 1 in 11,500. Odds of being murdered, 1 in 18,000. And odds of becoming a professional athlete, 1 in 22,000. So again, what this is saying is that the market is overvalued. Still, the entire market in general. Individual stocks are still overvalued. I have a very strict process, which again, I haven't researched stocks and I haven't bought any stock in 5 years. I've got buy orders out there now, but they haven't been filled for the portfolios I manage because the market keeps going up. This means all these things, and I'm going to again, if you want to research these manually like I did, go for it. I'm going to link them below. But over the coming days and weeks, I'm going to share with you more data, again, about specific sectors that might be undervalued, specific sectors that may be overvalued. Sorry, I'm getting messages from my team right now, which is why my phone's going off. Specific countries that may be undervalued, specific countries that may be overvalued. These kind of things I'm going to share with you over the next coming weeks. But these are my preliminary analysis or my preliminary findings based on my preliminary analysis up to this point. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you been researching stocks? Have you been finding pockets of undervaluation? What do you think about the valuations? Also, on that note, I'll also share with you my thoughts on, or I have been in the Facebook live trainings that I've been doing about most companies being in trouble with this coronavirus lockdown, the lack of cash flow. I'm going to analyze, again, I'm going to go through my stuff and try to kind of prove that out as well. But these 108 companies that I found were the quote unquote best, the ones that fit my preliminary analysis criteria. And they are massively overvalued. Again, I will share with that data with you when I have it. But I don't have the exact numbers of how overvalued they are. But they are overvalued. I can tell just looking at the preliminary numbers. Massively overvalued. Still. And these are the best, kind of quote unquote best companies with cash flow and all that. So if these companies are either having issues or massively overvalued still, what's going to happen to the companies that don't have cash flow and the coronavirus stuff? And again, I'll continue talking about all this, but I want to stay on track here. These are my preliminary findings. I'd love to hear yours. If you've been researching stocks, what you've been finding, where you've been finding it. Do you think everything's overvalued? Do you think everything's undervalued? What are your thoughts on valuation? What is cash flow? Anything? Any thoughts you have in the comments below? Make sure to, again, check out the links below for the exact places I've been looking for these investments. So if you want to look at them, and also the resources from that video that I mentioned earlier. So the Facebook live training I did. So if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like, love, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and hit the notification bell so you're notified anytime I release a new video, and releasing new videos all the time. If you're listening on a podcast, make sure to do the same stuff. I greatly appreciate everybody who's watching and viewing these videos. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'll answer them either in a video like this or in a live training or something like that, or maybe directly to you as well. So I hope this helps. I hope you have a great night, and I'll talk to you again soon.